Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the surprisingly complex mind of a blue whale attending their first group therapy session. Picture this: the largest animal to ever exist on Earth, all 100 feet and 200 tons of them, arriving 30 minutes early to an underwater support group because they're worried about the logistics of fitting in. You probably couldn't handle their level of overthinking about spatial awareness and social dynamics in confined spaces. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to hear in the comments what you think your pet might overthink about. Does your goldfish worry about swimming in circles? Does your cat stress about maintaining their mysterious reputation? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey through one anxious creature's mind. You arrive at the meeting spot, a deep ocean basin off the California coast where the continental shelf drops into comfortable darkness. Your sonar clicks bounce off the rocky walls, and you realize you're the first one here. Of course you are. You always arrive early because the math of maneuvering your body through social situations requires advanced planning. 100 feet of length doesn't exactly slip into spaces unnoticed. The therapy circle is supposed to form at 800 feet deep, where the water pressure feels like a weighted blanket, and the last traces of sunlight can't judge anyone. You've been thinking about this moment for weeks, ever since that traveling pod of dolphins mentioned there was a support group for whales who feel chronically misunderstood. They said it casually, the way smaller creatures can afford to be casual about things like just showing up or fitting in. You position yourself where you think the circle might form, but immediately second-guess the choice. If everyone arranges themselves around you, you'll be the center of attention, which defeats the purpose of a support circle where everyone's supposed to be equal. But if you stay on the edge, your tail might extend so far out that late arrivals will think you're not really committed to the process. The water carries the faint vibrations of approaching whales. Your heart, all 400 pounds of it, picks up pace. That's only about 20 beats per minute for you, but still, the acceleration is noticeable. You've practiced your introduction 1,000 times. Hi, I'm a blue whale, and I feel misunderstood. Simple. Direct. No need to mention that you're the largest animal that has ever lived, because surely everyone already knows that. It's literally the first thing anyone thinks when they see you. But what if they expect more? What if there's some unspoken therapy protocol you don't know about? You've spent most of your life in the open ocean, feeding on krill and avoiding ship strikes. Your social experience mostly consists of long-distance songs that travel hundreds of miles, reaching whales you'll never meet face to face, or face to tail, or whatever configuration happens when beings of your size attempt to gather in a circle. A humpback whale arrives, and you feel a mixture of relief and fresh anxiety. They glide to a spot that seems carefully chosen to neither crowd you nor appear standoffish. They nod, a gentle dip of their massive head, and you return the gesture, hoping your nod doesn't create a current that pushes them backward. Everything you do has consequences in the water. Every movement displaces thousands of gallons. You've learned to move slowly, deliberately, but sometimes you wonder if other whales interpret your careful movements as aloofness. Zoologists still debate whether whales have regional dialects, but you know the truth. The humpback's greeting call has a warm Pacific accent, all flowing vowels and gentle consonants. You respond with your own sound, that deep rumble that registers below human hearing. 20 hertz, the loneliest frequency, some researchers called it, though they meant the 52 hertz whale, not you. Still, the label sticks in your mind. What if your voice really is too deep for proper conversation? What if everyone's just pretending to hear you? More whales arrive. A grey whale, whose barnacles catch the filtered moonlight. A pod of orcas who cluster together, probably worried about their reputation. 2 belugas, whose white forms glow softly in the darkness. Each arrival makes you more aware of your size. You try to compress yourself, which is physically impossible, but psychologically necessary. Your longest recorded length was 110 feet. That's longer than 3 school buses. Why do you know that comparison? Because humans always measure you in terms of other things, as if you're too big to exist as just yourself. The circles slowly take shape, and you notice the humpback whale from earlier keeps adjusting their position, their long pectoral fins, creating gentle currents as they move. They catch you watching and offer what might be an embarrassed smile, if whales could smile. You recognize the nervous energy. They're humming softly, almost below perception, little melodic fragments that start and stop, like someone clearing their throat before a speech. Finally, a wise-looking grey whale, who seems to be facilitating the group, makes a low, welcoming sound that vibrates through everyone's bodies. "Let's begin," she says, her voice carrying the authority of someone who's traveled 24,000 miles round trip every year for decades. Would anyone like to share first? The humpback's humming intensifies for a moment, then stops. They lift one of those impossibly long pectoral fins, 15 feet of graceful anxiety, and the group turns their attention to them. You try to make yourself smaller again, grateful the focus has shifted. "Hi, I'm a humpback whale, and I feel misunderstood about my singing." Their voice wavers between notes, as if even speaking normally fights against their musical nature. "Everyone thinks I'm showing off when I sing for 45 minutes straight. Marine biologists call it the longest and most complex songs in the animal kingdom. And now there's all this pressure. You feel your own tension ease slightly. Here's another whale whose gift has become a burden." The humpback continues, their words flowing like a complicated melody. "Last month, I was working on a new composition. Something subtle, just exploring some themes about water temperature and the way moonlight fragments through kelp forests. 43 minutes of careful variation, building to this moment where the melody splits into harmonics that... Sorry, I'm doing it again." The group makes supportive sounds, low rumbles that mean keep going in the universal language of cetacean encouragement. You add your own deep vibration, careful to keep it soft. That's the thing, the humpback says, their voice cracking like a teenage whale's. I can't help but make everything into a song. Even my regular communication comes out in these elaborate patterns. The other day, I tried to simply say, "Nice krill, swarm over by the seamount," and it turned into a 12-minute aria with recurring motifs about abundance and the circle of life. The whale I was talking to just wanted directions, not a philosophical journey through sound. A beluga nods enthusiastically, creating little whirlpools with the motion. I relate to that, they chirp. Everyone expects me to be the cheerful one because of my face, but sometimes a smile is just the way your mouth is shaped, you know? The humpback's fins relax slightly. Exactly. And the worst part is, the songs change. Every year, all the males in my population learn the same new song, like we're some kind of underwater boy band that can't stick to its greatest hits. Do you know how exhausting it is to completely relearn your entire musical repertoire annually? Imagine if humans had to forget every song they knew and learn all new ones every single year. You think about your own calls, those simple, deep pulses that travel across entire ocean basins. No one expects you to compose symphonies, but then again, no one seems to hear your calls at all. Or if they do, they don't respond in a way you recognize. Maybe being misunderstood as a show-off is better than being misunderstood as untouchable. The research vessels follow me, the humpback continues, and you hear the exhaustion in their harmonics. Hydrophones everywhere, recording every note. They've turned my songs into greeting cards, meditation apps, space probe messages to aliens. My cousin's feeding lunge ended up as the sound effect in a horror movie. A horror movie. He was just trying to eat some fish, and now human children associate his dinner sounds with fear. The orcas in the group shift uncomfortably. You suspect they have their own complicated feelings about human entertainment. One of them clicks softly. At least they think your sounds are beautiful. They use our hunting calls in military training videos. But that's just it, the humpback says, and their voice rises into an accidental melody before they catch themselves and drop back to monotone. They think the beauty is the point, like I'm performing for them, like 40 million years of evolution led to me being their background music. Last week, a whale-watching boat followed me for 3 hours because I was singing. I wasn't singing. I was having an argument with my brother about whether the Antarctic krill were worth the longer migration. It was deeply personal, and they turned it into a YouTube video with 2 million views. The gray whale facilitator nods slowly. It sounds like you feel reduced to entertainment when you're trying to communicate something meaningful. Yes, the humpback's affirmation comes out as 3 ascending notes before they clamp down on the musicality. Sorry? Yes. That's exactly it. My songs aren't just pretty sounds. They're everything. They're how I say I'm lonely, or that I found a good feeding spot, or that I'm ready to mate, or that I miss my mother who migrated to different waters. But all anyone hears is nature's orchestra or songs of the sea. They've turned my entire language into elevator music. The silence that follows the humpback's confession feels heavy with understanding. You notice how everyone seems to be processing their words, translating their own experiences through this lens of being reduced to a single trait. The water carries tiny vibrations of suppressed sounds, half-formed thoughts that haven't quite made it to speech. One of the orcas moves forward slightly, and the entire circle tenses. You catch yourself doing it too, that involuntary tightening that comes from 70 years of documentary narratives. The orca notices everyone's reaction and makes a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. This right here is what I wanted to talk about. The orca's voice is carefully modulated, each click and whistle precisely controlled. I haven't even said anything yet, and half of you shifted backward. The belugas tried to hide it, but I saw those tail flukes angle for a quicker escape route. The accused belugas chirp apologetically, but the orca waves a pectoral fin. No, don't apologize. That's kind of my point. I'm a killer whale, opening up about feeling misunderstood, and I can see the irony isn't lost on anyone. Yes, I have teeth. Yes, I hunt. Yes, my family pod has cultural traditions around hunting that go back generations. But I cry. Did you know that? We have spindle cells, the same neurons humans have for processing complex emotions. When my grandmother died last year, I carried her body for 17 days because I couldn't accept she was gone. The group settles slightly, and you find yourself leaning in. You've seen orcas from a distance, usually giving them space because, well, everyone gives orcas space. But hearing vulnerability from an apex predator hits differently. The name doesn't help, the orca continues. Killer whale. Do you know it was originally whale killer? Because we sometimes hunt whales? Somewhere in translation, it got flipped, and now I'm stuck being a killer first, whale second. My mother calls me Sunset because I was born as the sun touched the water. But to the rest of the ocean, I'm just another killer whale. Scientifically, I'm not even a whale. I'm the largest member of the dolphin family, but try explaining that when everyone's already swimming away. A pilot whale across the circle makes a sympathetic sound. I feel you on the naming thing. They call us pilot whales because they thought we followed a leader blindly. Turns out we have complex matriarchal societies, but the name's stuck. But at least pilot sounds professional, the orca says, and there's bitter humor in their echolocation. I've been typecast as the villain in every ocean story. You know what my last Tuesday looked like? I spent the morning teaching my nephew how to identify different types of salmon by their splash patterns. Took 4 hours because he kept getting distracted by seabirds. Then I played with some kelp tossing it around with my sister like we've done since we were calves. In the afternoon, I listened to my aunt tell the same story about the time she surfed behind a blue whale. Sorry, they glance at you, no offense. You rumble that none was taken, though you're trying to remember if an orca ever surfed in your wake. Your memory holds a lot of ocean, and sometimes the details blur together. Then the orca continues, I helped watch my cousin's new calf while she went to feed. Do you know how hard it is to keep a baby orca entertained? They have all this energy but no coordination. He kept trying to spy hop, but couldn't get more than his chin above water. By evening, I was exhausted. Just wanted to float and watch the sunset my mother named me for. And right then, a documentary crew shows up, following me with zoom lenses, waiting for me to do something savage for their Predators of the Deep special. The orca's voice shifts, taking on a mock narrator tone. The killer whale, nature's perfect predator, eternally on the hunt. With a bite force of 19,000 pounds per square inch, these wolves of the sea show no mercy. They drop back to their normal voice. I was literally just floating there, thinking about whether kelp games count as cardio, and they're making me sound like some underwater Terminator. You understand this particular frustration. The documentaries always catch you feeding, mouth open, impossibly wide, and never during the quiet moments when you're just drifting, thinking about ocean currents, and whether that interesting blue-green color near the surface means a good krill bloom or just unusual algae. My pod has a dialect, the orca continues, their sounds becoming more fluid as emotion creeps in. Specific to just our family. We have inside jokes in our language. Sounds that mean, remember when Uncle got his head stuck in that kelp forest? Or Mum's using her fake polite voice again. We have doctoral-level discussions about the best hunting strategies that involve physics, calculations you'd need sonar to fully appreciate. But what makes the highlight reel? The 5 seconds of us sharing a seal. The grey whale facilitator clicks thoughtfully. It sounds like you feel your complexity is being reduced to your predator status. My 3-year-old niece composes songs, the orca says quietly. Not hunting songs, just songs. About bubbles and the way light looks from below, and how fish scales sound different when they're schooling versus swimming alone. She's already learned to stop singing when the tour boats come, because she knows what footage they want. 3 years old, and she's already self-censoring her joy because she knows humans want to see teeth, not art. The orca's words hang in the water like bioluminescence, visible long after the source has settled. You feel the group processing this image of a young orca learning to hide her songs, and it strikes something deep in your massive chest. The grey whale, who's been facilitating, clears her blowhole with a sound that manages to be both gentle and attention-getting. Thank you for sharing that, she says to the orca, then seems to gather herself. I suppose I should practice what I preach about vulnerability. I know I'm supposed to be facilitating, but the truth is, I started this group because I needed it too. She shifts, and you notice the scars along her side, the rake marks from countless migrations through shallow waters. Grey whales feed differently than you do, rolling on their sides in the muck, and it shows in every barnacle and mark on their bodies. Every year I swim 12,000 miles round trip, 6,000 miles to the feeding grounds, 6,000 back to the breeding lagoons. And every year, someone has something to say about how I do it. Her voice carries the exhaustion of someone who's repeated this journey for 40 years. Too slow, they say. Too close to shore. Too predictable. Do you know what it's like to have your entire life's journey tracked on apps? Humans literally take bets on when I'll pass certain headlands. A younger whale in the group, maybe on their 5th or 6th migration, makes a small sound of recognition. The grey whale nods toward them. You know, you've felt it. The pressure to maintain the schedule everyone expects. Heaven forbid you want to spend an extra week in Monterey Bay because the mysid shrimp are particularly good this year. Suddenly, there are news articles about delayed migration patterns and climate change indicators when really you just found a good restaurant and wanted to stay a little longer. You think about your own migrations, following the krill blooms across entire ocean basins. No one tracks your movements with the same scrutiny, partly because you're usually too far offshore for casual observation. But you understand the weight of expectations. Last year, the grey whale continues, I decided to try something different. Instead of hugging the coastline the entire way, I went a bit deeper through one section. Just wanted to see what it was like, you know? To swim through water where I couldn't see the bottom, where the pressure was different, where maybe I'd meet some whales who weren't grey whales doing the exact same thing I was doing. She pauses, and you hear the conflict in her silence. The marine biologists lost their minds. Radio tags, aerial surveys, concerned conferences about whether I was sick or disoriented. 3 different research vessels followed me for a week, all because I took a detour. 43 years of the same route, and I take one creative liberty with my path, and suddenly I'm either dying or revolutionary. The belugas click sympathetically. One offers, we get tracked in the Arctic, but at least ice moves around. Gives us an excuse for variety. But that's just it, the grey whale says, her frustration creating small whirlpools as she gestures with her fins. I don't want an excuse. I want to be able to choose my path without justifying it to anyone. Do you know how many times I've passed the same underwater canyon? Thousands. And it's beautiful, sure, but sometimes I wonder what's in the next canyon over. Or what's beyond the continental shelf where the water turns that deep blue that makes you feel small in a good way. You involuntarily rumble in agreement. That deep blue where the ocean becomes infinite is your home, and you've never thought about what it means to whales who spend their lives in the shallows. The worst part is other gray whales, she admits, and her voice drops like she's sharing a shameful secret. My own pod gives me looks when I mention wanting to try something different. That's not how we've always done it, they say. Your grandmother followed this route, and her grandmother before her. Like I'm dishonoring 20,000 years of migration tradition by wondering if maybe, just maybe, there's more than one way to get from Alaska to Mexico. The humpback from earlier makes a harmonious sound of understanding. Traditional songs versus innovation. I know that tension, right? The gray whale's relief at being understood ripples through the water. And it's not that I don't respect the tradition. I do. There's something profound about following paths carved by countless generations, knowing that my ancestors saw these same underwater mountains, felt these same currents. But I also have this brain, right? This consciousness that asks why and what if and couldn't we just? And apparently, using it makes me either sick or rebellious. She turns slightly, addressing the group, but somehow making each whale feel seen. I started this support group after my detour last year. When I finally rejoined my pod, I felt so alone. Not physically, we travel in groups, but mentally, spiritually, I felt like the only whale in the ocean asking these questions. Then I met a blue whale at a feeding aggregation who mentioned feeling isolated despite being surrounded by krill and water, and I thought, maybe I'm not the only one. You remember that conversation, brief as it was? Two whales from different worlds, finding common ground in their shared sense of displacement. You hadn't expected it to lead to this, to being here in this circle, but you're grateful it did. So yes, the gray whale concludes, I facilitate this group, but I'm not above it. I'm in it. Every time one of you shares about being misunderstood, I'm right there with you, fighting the urge to take the scenic route while everyone else expects me to be a transportation schedule they can set their watches to. A deep clicking emerges from the darker edge of the circle, where the water pressure increases and the last traces of surface light give up their struggle. A sperm whale moves forward slightly, their massive rectangular head catching what little illumination filters down. The clicking continues, a complex pattern that sounds like sonar but carries emotional undertones you recognize as nervousness. I guess I'll go next, the sperm whale says, their voice a mixture of those strange clicks and lower tones that seem to come from somewhere deeper than just their throat. Though talking about isolation while literally being in the deepest position in our circle feels a bit on the nose. There's gentle laughter from the group, the kind that acknowledges irony without making light of pain. The sperm whale's head, taking up a full third of their 60-foot body, dips slightly in what might be appreciation or embarrassment. I'm a sperm whale, and They pause, reorganizing their clicks into something more coherent. I dive deep. That's what I do. 3,000 feet, sometimes more, holding my breath for 90 minutes to hunt giant squid in the absolute darkness. And everyone thinks it's because I'm antisocial. You feel a pang of recognition. The deep ocean is your habitat too, though you rarely dive below 1,000 feet. But you know the assumptions others make about choosing depth over surface social interactions. Last month, the sperm whale continues. I was at a nice mixed species gathering near a seamount. Good company, lots of small talk about currents and fish populations. But after about an hour, I started getting twitchy. Not because I didn't enjoy the company, but because I could sense squid movement 2,000 feet below. It's like, imagine being at a party, but knowing there's a really important work deadline in another room. The orcas click in understanding. Hunting instincts don't pause for social events. Exactly. But it's more than hunting. It's... Okay, this is going to sound weird. The sperm whale's clicks speed up, betraying anxiety. I like it down there, in the deep, where it's just me and the pressure and the darkness and whatever giant squid I'm tracking. The pressure feels like a full-body hug. The darkness isn't empty, it's full of possibility. My echolocation becomes this pure connection between me and the environment. No surface noise, no boat engines, no judgment. They pause, and you hear them struggling to articulate something complex. Up here in the social zones, I'm always aware of my head. It's huge, I know, filled with spermaceti oil that helps me dive and might help focus my sonar. Humans named it spermaceti because they thought it was... Well, they were wrong about what it was. But the name stuck, and now I'm a sperm whale with a head full of oil diving alone in the dark. The jokes write themselves. A beluga makes a sympathetic sound. Names we didn't choose defining how others see us. But that's the thing, the sperm whale says, their voice dropping to deeper frequencies. I choose the dives. Every single time. And the deeper I go, the more the other whales at the surface think I'm avoiding them. There goes the weird one, I imagine them saying. Off to the abyss again, instead of socializing like a normal whale. The sperm whale's body language shifts, becoming more animated as they warm to their topic. Do you know what it's like down there? Really? It's not lonely. It's focused. Every click of echolocation paints a three-dimensional map in my mind. I can sense a squid's heartbeat from hundreds of feet away. I can feel the water temperature change in layers, each one a different world with different rules. At 2,000 feet, the pressure would crush most surface dwellers, but for me, it's like finally being able to breathe properly. You understand this in your bones. The deep water has a quality that shallow water lacks, a weight that paradoxically makes you feel lighter. But try explaining that at the surface, the sperm whale continues. Try telling a dolphin that you find 90 minutes of solo diving more fulfilling than their acrobatic social games. They look at you like you just said you prefer eating rocks to fish. And maybe some of it is my fault. When I surface after a deep dive, I'm different. It takes time to readjust, not just physically, but mentally. Going from the profound quiet of the deep to the chaos of the surface social world is jarring. They demonstrate with the sound, starting with the pure, focused clicks of deep water echolocation, and gradually adding layers of noise until it becomes almost static. That's what surfacing feels like in my head. And by the time I've adjusted enough to engage properly, I'm already thinking about the next dive. The grey whale facilitator nods slowly. It sounds like you feel torn between your authentic needs and social expectations. I had a cousin, the sperm whale says quietly, who tried to be more social. Stayed in the upper waters, joined the pod games, kept their dives short and recreational. They were miserable, couldn't catch squid properly in the shallow hunts, started losing weight. But everyone praised them for being so much more approachable than the rest of us deep divers. They literally made themselves sick trying to be the kind of whale others expected. The group sits with this for a moment, the weight of forced conformity pressing down like water pressure. I love my pod, the sperm whale adds quickly. I do. When we surface together after a hunt and share our experiences through coders, when we babysit each other's calves at the surface while mothers dive, there's real connection there. But it's like, I can love them and still need my depth. I can be social and still require 90 minutes of darkness to feel like myself. Why does it have to be one or the other? The sperm whale's question lingers in the water like bioluminescence, and you notice one of the belugas hasn't stopped moving since the conversation began. They're not swimming away, just constantly adjusting, tilting their head at different angles as if trying to find a position where their natural expression might look more serious. Finally, they stop fighting their anatomy and releases a burst of chirps that sound like frustrated laughter. You know what? I'm just going to say it. I'm a beluga whale, and I'm exhausted from being everyone's emotional support animal. Their voice carries the kind of tired humor that comes from years of explaining the same thing. Look at my face. Go ahead, everyone look. This upturned mouth line, the way my melon curves, I'm literally structured to look like I'm smiling. And I'm so tired of it. The other beluga in the group nods vigorously, creating small whirlpools. Preach! Just yesterday, someone told me I must be having a great day because I looked so happy. I was actually processing grief about losing my favorite fjord to shipping traffic. Right? The first beluga's voice rises and falls in musical patterns that betray their Arctic origin. And it's not just other whales. The humans are worse. Do you know what they call us? Sea canaries, because we vocalize so much, and smiling whales because of our faces. They put us on children's toys and hospital murals. We're the official whale of cheer and joy, and sometimes I just want to be sad without someone pointing out that I still look delighted about it. You watch as they demonstrate, their flexible neck allowing them to turn their head in ways that would be impossible for you. See? Grieving? Still smiling. Anxious about climate change melting my ice habitat? Still smiling. Worried my calf isn't eating enough? Still smiling. It's like being trapped in a mascot costume of myself. The sperm whale clicks sympathetically. At least when I'm in the deep, no one can see my expression. Must be nice, the beluga says, but there's warmth in their tone. Up in the Arctic waters, we're visible from above and below. Crystal clear water, white bodies that stand out against everything, and these faces that apparently scream, "I'm having the time of my life," no matter what we're actually experiencing. They pause, and when they continue, their voice has dropped from its usual cheerful pitch to something more raw. 3 years ago, my pod lost 4 members to a sudden ice shift. Trapped them in a breathing hole that closed too fast. We circled that spot for days, calling for them, knowing they couldn't answer. And some researchers photographed us during that time. You know what the caption was? "Playful belugas gather for social time." Because we were together and we have these faces, so obviously we must have been playing. The group releases a collective sound of frustration and understanding. You feel it in your own body, the way grief and appearance can be so disconnected. The worst part, the beluga continues, is that I internalized it. Started believing maybe I should be as happy as I look. Other whales would come to me with problems because I seemed so approachable and cheerful. And I'd help, of course. I'd help, but inside I'm thinking, I have my own problems, my own anxieties. But who's going to take the smiling whale's stress seriously? They perform a complicated spiral in the water, their white body catching fragments of light. Do you know, belugas are one of the only whales that can change our facial expressions? We can purse our lips, move our melons to adjust our echolocation. We have more facial mobility than almost any other cetacean. But none of that matters because the default setting looks like joy, so that's all anyone sees. The humpback from earlier harmonizes softly, being reduced to one characteristic, even a positive one. Especially a positive one, the beluga corrects. Because then you're not allowed to complain. What kind of ungrateful whale complains about being seen as too happy? It's like they search for an analogy, like being a tropical fish complaining about being too colorful. People think it's a gift, not a burden. The second beluga chimes in. Tell them about the sanctuary thing. The first beluga's chirps take on an embarrassed quality. Oh, that. So there's this marine sanctuary where they take injured whales for rehabilitation. And they use beluga recordings to calm the other species because our voices are supposedly cheerful and uplifting. They literally prescribe my voice as an antidepressant. Do you have any idea what that's like? Knowing that your distress calls, your lonely songs, your "where is everyone" sounds are being played to soothe others because they sound happy to human ears. You think about your own calls, so deep they're below human hearing. There's a strange privilege in being inaudible to the species that tries so hard to interpret everything. I recorded those sounds during my first separation from my mother. The beluga continues, their voice cracking. I was terrified, calling for her over and over. But because I'm a beluga and it was high-pitched and melodic, they filed it under cheerful vocalizations. They play my fear to help others sleep. The beluga turns to address the group more directly. I'm not saying I want to be seen as miserable. I just want the option, the flexibility, to have a bad day without someone pointing to my face as evidence. I'm fine. To be complex, to be a whale who sometimes feels joy, yes, but also grief and anger and confusion and all the things my stupid smiling face apparently negates. They float for a moment, seemingly exhausted by their own honesty. Some days I understand why the narwhals grew horns. At least it makes people think twice before assuming they're just happy unicorns of the sea. A quiet shift in the water draws your attention to a whale who's been silent until now, positioned carefully at the edge of the circle, where the continental shelf drops away. The right whale moves forward with deliberate slowness, each movement calculated and precise. You notice the distinctive callosities on their head, those patches of roughened skin that look like barnacles but aren't, unique to each individual like fingerprints. I've been working up the courage to speak for the last hour, the right whale says, their voice carrying the measured pace of someone who's learned that rushing leads to mistakes, which I realize is very on brand for me. The slow one, the cautious one, the one who takes 3 times as long as everyone else to do anything. There's a self-deprecating humor in their tone, but underneath you hear genuine pain. The right whale continues, I'm one of about 400 North Atlantic right whales left. 400. Out of what used to be thousands. And you'd think that would make others understanding about why I'm careful, but they trail off, and you see them checking their surroundings again, a habit so ingrained it seems unconscious. Last week, I was crossing the shipping lane off Boston. You know, the place where 3 of my cousins have been killed by vessel strikes in the past 5 years. And I was doing what I always do. Surface, breathe, check for engine sounds. Dive shallow, swim 50 meters, surface again. Check. Breathe. Repeat. The orcas shift uncomfortably. Even apex predators understand the fear of things too big to fight. A pod of dolphins came through, the right whale continues. started making comments. At this rate, you'll reach the feeding grounds by next winter. Maybe if you swam in a straight line instead of zigzagging. No wonder they call you right whales. You're right to be worried about everything. The pain in their voice is evident. They zipped past me, jumping and playing in the exact water where my aunt was hit by a container ship 2 years ago. The grey whale makes a low sound of understanding. Different species, different survival strategies. But it's not just other species, the right whale says, their voice gaining strength. It's my own kind too. The younger ones who haven't seen what I've seen. Who think I'm paranoid for teaching them to listen for engines, to count the seconds between surface intervals, to never relax in the shipping lanes. They want to be brave, fast. Modern whales who don't let fear control them. They demonstrate their swimming pattern, the careful surface breathe dive rhythm that looks overcautious until you understand the context. Do you know why we're called right whales? Because we were the right whales to hunt. We float when dead, swim slowly, stay close to shore. Everything that made us perfect targets. And now, those same traits make us perfect victims for ship strikes. You rumble in sympathy. Your own size offers some protection from ships, but you felt the terror of engine sounds growing louder, with no way to know which direction they're coming from. Zoologists have documented that we're getting more stressed, the right whale continues. Higher stress hormones in our feces, fewer calves being born, more aggressive behavior. And yes, part of me wants to throw caution to the wind, to swim fast and straight like the fin whales, to stop spending 60% of my energy on vigilance. But then I remember my mother, who was brave once, swam straight across a shipping lane to show she wasn't afraid. The necropsy report said she was pregnant. The group falls silent. Even the water seems to still. So yes, I'm slow, the right whale says, and there's defiance now mixed with the pain. I'm methodical. I check for danger obsessively. I teach my calves to be afraid before I teach them to be confident. Because I'd rather be mocked for caution than mourned for courage. But do you know how exhausting it is to be one of 400 survivors and have others act like your trauma response is a personality flaw? The beluga who spoke earlier chirps softly, being judged for the very thing that keeps you alive. The maritime pilots know us now, the right whale continues. Some captains slow down when they see us. There's a whole network trying to protect us. But it's like being a celebrity for the worst reason. There's one of the last right whales swimming slowly across our path again. I heard a whale watching guide describe me as adorably cautious, like my survival instincts are a quirky personality trait instead of a trauma response to near extinction. They surface in their characteristic way, the V-shaped blow that makes them easy to identify from boats. I dream sometimes about swimming fast and careless, about crossing open water without counting seconds or calculating angles, about being just another whale instead of a critically endangered statistic with PTSD. But then morning comes and the engines start, and I begin my careful dance again. The right whale's voice drops to almost a whisper. My grandmother remembered when there were thousands of us. She said we used to race sometimes, just for fun. Can you imagine? Right whales racing. Now, I measure every movement against the possibility it might be my last. And others see that as a choice, as being overcautious, as if I'm slow because I want to be, not because I'm trying to ensure there might be 401 of us next year instead of 399. They settle back into their spot at the edge of the circle, and you notice they're still scanning, still listening, even here in the relative safety of deep water. I just wanted somewhere to admit that being careful isn't the same as being cowardly. That slow isn't the same as stupid. That sometimes survival looks like paranoia to those who've never had to calculate the odds of making it through each day. The right whale's words about survival and perception seem to unlock something in the group. A pilot whale, who's been floating near the gray whale facilitator, suddenly releases a long, whistling sigh that carries across the circle. Their dark body, smaller than most here, but carrying an unmistakable presence of authority, shifts forward. I need to share something, they say, and their voice carries the weight of someone who rarely admits weakness. But first, can everyone please notice that I positioned myself next to our facilitator, not at the front of the circle, not leading the formation, just participating. Do you know how hard that was for me to do? A few understanding clicks ripple through the group. The pilot whale continues. I've been leading my pod for 12 years. 12 years of being the one who decides where we go, when we dive, which currents to follow. And I'm so tired. But I can't show it because the moment I hesitate, everyone panics. You watch as they unconsciously straighten, as if the mere act of admitting fatigue triggers a need to appear stronger. They call us pilot whales because early whalers thought we had a leader who piloted the group. Turns out they were more right than they knew, except it's not some magical navigation ability. It's just making decisions and hoping they're right while 40 family members follow without question. The sperm whale clicks sympathetically. The pressure of others depending on your choices. Last month, the pilot whale continues, we were following a squid migration pattern I've known for years. Except this time, the squid weren't there. Climate change, overfishing, who knows? But suddenly, I'm leading 40 whales, including 8 calves, into empty water. And do you know what happened when I paused to reconsider? They demonstrate, stopping their forward movement abruptly. Complete chaos. My sister started the anxiety calls. My brother began swimming in circles. The calves picked up on the adult stress and started crying. All because I stopped for 10 seconds to think. The humpback hums low, understanding. They interpret any uncertainty as danger. Exactly. So I picked a direction. Just picked one. No magical pilot whale wisdom, no ancestral knowledge guiding me. Just a middle-aged whale making an educated guess while trying to look confident about it. We found squid eventually, but those 3 hours of swimming toward nothing while maintaining leader energy? I aged a year. The pilot whale's voice takes on a frustrated edge. Do you know what it's like to never be allowed to say, "I don't know"? My nephew asked me last week why the water tastes different. It does taste different, more acidic, but I can't explain ocean chemistry to a 2-year-old. But I also can't say, "I don't know," because then he'll panic that Uncle doesn't have all the answers. They perform a slow roll, a behavior you recognize as self-soothing. So I made something up about seasonal changes and swimming patterns, and he believed me because I'm the pilot, the leader, the one who knows. And now I'm carrying the guilt of lying to him on top of everything else. The gray whale facilitator nods slowly. Leadership often means bearing uncertainty alone. But that's just it, the pilot whale says, excitement creeping into their voice. Why should it be alone? We have 40 brilliant whales in our pod. My aunt has been swimming these waters longer than I've been alive. My cousin has this uncanny ability to sense weather changes. My sister notices tiny details I miss completely. But the moment I suggest collaborative decision-making, they look at me like I've lost my mind. They mimic the voices of their pod members. "You're the pilot. We trust you. You've never led us wrong, except I have. Remember the toxic algae bloom 3 years ago? I led us right into it because I was too proud to admit the water looked wrong to me. Half the pod was sick for weeks, but somehow that became a story about how I bravely navigated us through challenging waters. You understand this particular burden. Your size often puts you in de facto leadership positions during mixed species gatherings, everyone assuming that biggest means wisest. The pressure to have answers when you're really just trying to figure things out, like everyone else. The worst part is the dreams, the pilot whale admits, their voice dropping. I dream about swimming alone. No one following, no one looking to me for direction. Just me and the current, and the freedom to be wrong without consequences. And then I wake up, and there's my pod, already arranged in formation, waiting for me to tell them where to go. They laugh, but it's tinged with exhaustion. My mother led before me, 40 years of decisions, and she never once admitted to uncertainty. Even on her deathbed, she was giving me directions about summer feeding routes. I wanted to ask her if she ever felt lost, if she ever wished someone else would take over. But she died believing leaders don't have doubts. The pilot whale turns to address the group more directly. I love my pod. I'd die for them. But sometimes I fantasize about joining a different pod where no one knows. I'm supposed to be a leader, where I could just follow someone else for once, where my value isn't tied to my ability to make split-second decisions that affect everyone I love. They pause, then add quietly, 3 nights ago, we encountered another pilot whale pod. Their leader was young, uncertain, kept looking back at his pod for reassurance. And you know what? They seemed fine, happy even, maybe even more cohesive, because they were figuring things out together. But when I suggested to my pod that we could try more collaborative decision-making, my brother said, "But you're such a natural leader." Natural. Like I was born for this exhaustion. As the pilot whale's confession about the burden of unwanted leadership settles over the group, you notice movement from the most unusual member of your circle. The narwhal has been quiet until now, their mottled grey body almost invisible in the darker water, except for the unmistakable tusk, that long, spiraled tooth that has defined their entire existence in the eyes of the world. They approach the center of the circle with what seems like reluctance, their tusk careful not to accidentally touch anyone. "I almost didn't come tonight," the narwhal begins, their voice carrying the distinctive Arctic accent of the truly isolated populations. "Thought maybe a support group for whales who feel misunderstood wasn't the place for the unicorn of the sea. Like, what could I possibly have to complain about? I'm magical, right? Mystical. Special." The last word comes out bitter, and you see several whales shift in recognition of that particular pain. Being special in a way you never asked for. "Let me tell you about being a unicorn," the narwhal continues, and a tusk catches a stray beam of filtered moonlight. "Last summer, a documentary crew followed me for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. You know what they were hoping to film? Me using my tusk to joust with another male, or spearfish, or break through ice in some dramatic display of Arctic survival. You know what I actually did for 3 weeks? Ate cod. Slept. Worried about whether my cousin's new calf was getting enough nutrients. Normal whale stuff. The beluga chirps in sympathy. They want the performance, not the reality. They ended up using 12 seconds of footage, the narwhal says. Me swimming past an iceberg with my tusk visible. Slow motion, dramatics music, narrator talking about one of nature's most mysterious creatures, and legends come to life. They literally turned me eating Arctic cod into some kind of mythical quest. The cod wasn't even trying to escape. It was old and slow, and I was just having lunch, but apparently that's not magical enough. They rotate slowly, and you notice how they've learned to account for the tusk's weight in every movement. Do you know what this actually is? They gesture at their tusk with their flipper. It's a tooth. An overgrown left canine tooth that decided to spiral outside my mouth. Some of us have 2. Some females have them too. It's got millions of nerve endings, and I can sense changes in water pressure and temperature with it. It's basically a really inconvenient sensory organ that makes it hard to navigate tight spaces. The sperm whale clicks understanding. Body parts that define how others see you. But no one wants to hear that, the narwhal continues. They want to hear about unicorns. See unicorns. Like I'm not even a real whale, just some fantasy creature that accidentally exists. My 5-year-old nephew asked me last month if I could grant wishes. Wishes. I can't even grant my own wish to swim through kelp forests without getting tangled. They demonstrate the awkward sideways movement required to navigate around obstacles. Every interaction starts with the tusk. What's it for? Is it sharp? Does it hurt? Can I touch it? Like, imagine meeting someone and having them immediately fixate on your teeth. Just your teeth. For every conversation. Forever. The group murmurs in sympathy, and the narwhal's voice gains momentum. And the theories? Oh, the theories. It's for fighting. It's for fishing. It's for breaking ice. It's for mating displays. It's for echolocation. You know what I use it for most? Sensing salinity gradients to find good feeding areas. That's it. My magical unicorn horn helps me find where the fresh water meets salt water so I can locate Arctic cod. How's that for mystical? You think about your own feeding, the simple act of opening your mouth wide to engulf krill. At least, no one assigns mystical properties to your jaw. The worst part is other narwhals buy into it sometimes. They continue. My brother has a perfectly straight, impressive tusk. Mine curves slightly to the left. Just genetics, right? But he says things like, you need to embrace your uniqueness, and not everyone can be the unicorn of the sea. I don't want to be the unicorn of the sea. I want to be Dave. My name is Dave. The unexpected personal detail breaks through the group's composure, and several whales release sounds of surprise and sympathy. Dave, the pilot whale repeats thoughtfully. It's nice to meet you, Dave. Thank you, Dave the narwhal says, and there's real emotion in their voice. Do you know how long it's been since someone used my actual name instead of the narwhal or unicorn? Or, oh my God, is that a real tusk? They float for a moment, gathering themselves. Indigenous humans have known us forever. They have practical words for us. Words that acknowledge we're animals, not myths. But then European whalers saw us and lost their minds. Started selling our tusks as unicorn horns. Ground them up for medicine. Displayed them in cabinets of curiosities. And now, I'm stuck being mysterious and magical when really I just want to eat fish and complain about water temperature with my friends. Dave performs a complicated maneuver to scratch their back against an outcropping of rock, the tusk making what should be a simple action into a calculated endeavor. Last week, I met a bowhead whale who's 200 years old. 200. Living history. Survived the worst of commercial whaling. Remembers when the Arctic was different. Has wisdom about ice patterns spanning centuries. But when we were swimming together, you know what a passing research vessel focused on? Me. Because I have a pointy tooth, and the bowhead just has the secrets of surviving climate change. The ancient wisdom of bowhead whales is something you've heard about but never experienced. To think they're overlooked in favor of a tooth seems particularly absurd. I just want to be normal, Dave says quietly. Not special, not magical, not mystical, just a whale who happens to have an external tooth and really likes Arctic cod. Is that so much to ask? After Dave's revelation about wanting to be seen as just Dave, not a swimming legend, the circle falls into a different kind of silence. It's not the awkward quiet from the beginning, when you were all strangers trying to figure out how vulnerable to be. This is the silence of recognition, of seeing yourself reflected in every story shared tonight. You're the first to break it, surprising yourself. Your voice, that deep 20 hertz rumble that you've always worried was too low for proper conversation, fills the space between all of you. I've been thinking, you begin, and immediately want to take it back, because thinking is what got you into this mess of anxiety in the first place. But the group turns toward you with such open acceptance that you continue. Every single one of us came here feeling alone in our misunderstanding. The humpback with their musical burden. The orca trapped in a villain role. The gray whale who just wants to take a different path. The sperm whale who needs their depth. The belugas forced to smile through everything. The right whale whose caution is seen as paranoia. The pilot whale exhausted from unwanted leadership. Dave who just wants to be Dave. You pause, realizing this is the longest you've spoken in years. And me, the blue whale, who everyone sees as too big to need connection. But listening to all of you, we're all carrying the same weight, just in different shapes. The gray whale facilitator nods encouragingly, and you feel brave enough to continue. We've spent so much time feeling misunderstood by others that we forgot to look for those who might understand. But here we are. Different species, different oceans, different challenges, and yet every story tonight felt familiar. Dave the Narwhal clicks agreement. When you were talking about arriving early because of your size, I felt that. I show up early everywhere to figure out how to position my tusk so I don't accidentally poke someone. And when you mentioned your deep calls going unanswered, the sperm whale adds, I thought about my echolocation in the deep. Perfect communication in a language no one else speaks at that depth. The humpback begins to hum, then catches themselves and starts to apologize, but the group encourages them to continue. The melody that emerges is different from their usual complex compositions. It's simple, repetitive, soothing. A lullaby that speaks to shared experience rather than individual performance. This is what I've wanted to sing, the humpback says softly. Not a 45-minute aria about the meaning of existence. Just this. Connection. Understanding. The harmony that comes from being heard. One of the belugas, who's been practicing letting their face show concentration despite its natural upward curve, makes an observation. We've all been performing for the wrong audience, trying to explain ourselves to those who see us through their own narrow lens. But maybe the answer isn't to be understood by everyone. Maybe it's finding our pod, even if that pod looks nothing like traditional pods. You think about this. A pod made up of different species, united not by biology, but by the shared experience of being reduced to a single trait. The orca speaks up. My grandmother used to say that family isn't just blood. It's who shows up when you call. And tonight, you all showed up. The right whale, still maintaining vigilant watch even in this safe space, adds something profound. I've spent so much energy trying to convince others that my caution is justified. But you all just accepted it. No one told me to swim faster or be braver. You understood without explanation. That's what we've been missing, the pilot whale realizes. Not leadership or followers, but equals who understand the weight we carry. I don't have to make decisions for you all. We can just us. The conversation flows more freely now, whales building on each other's observations. The grey whale talks about how the sperm whale's love of depth helped her feel less guilty about wanting to explore beyond the traditional migration route. The sperm whale shares how the beluga's forced cheerfulness resonated with their own pressure to be social when they need solitude. Dave mentions that the pilot whale's leadership exhaustion made them feel less alone in the burden of unwanted specialness. You know what's funny, one of the belugas says, and this time their smile seems genuine rather than anatomical. We've spent this whole night talking about being misunderstood, but I feel more understood right now than I have in years. The group begins to plan. Not formally, but in the way that understanding naturally breeds connection. The grey whale mentions she'll be passing through these waters again next month on her migration. The humpback offers to compose a simple song, just a few notes, that could serve as a gathering call. The orcas suggest they could spread the word to other whales who might need this space. A support group that actually supports, the right whale says, wonderingly. No judgment, no trying to fix each other, just witness and understanding. As the night deepens and the gathering naturally begins to wind down, you feel something shift in your massive chest. The weight is still there. You're still the largest animal on Earth, still struggling with the isolation that brings. But now you know you're not alone in feeling alone. There are others who understand the burden of being reduced to a single characteristic, who know what it's like to have their complexity flattened into a nature documentary soundbite. The water around you has warmed with the presence of these whales, these new friends who see you not as a blue whale, but as yourself. For the first time in longer than you can remember, when you release one of your deep calls into the ocean, you're not calling into emptiness. You're calling to friends who understand that sometimes the deepest voices carry the most need for connection. As you all begin to disperse, promising to return, to stay in touch through the long-distance language of whale song and sonar, you realize something. Being misunderstood hasn't changed. The world will still see you as too big, the humpback as a performer, the orca as a villain, Dave as a unicorn. But now you have a pod that sees beyond the surface. The ocean feels less vast and more like home as you swim slowly back toward your feeding grounds. Your breathing deepens, matching the rhythm of the swells. The krill can wait until morning. Tonight, you're carrying something more nourishing than food. The knowledge that somewhere in this big blue world, there are others who understand the weight of being perpetually misunderstood. And sometimes that's all any of us really need. The gentle acceptance of those who say, "Yes, I know that feeling too." Your sonar clicks slow, your heart rate drops to its resting rhythm, and for once, the ocean's vastness feels like possibility rather than loneliness. You close your eyes, letting the current guide you, finally able to rest in the knowledge that being the biggest doesn't mean being alone. The others are dispersing now, each heading back to their corners of the ocean, but the connection remains. You can feel it in the water, in the way the humpback's simple melody carries further than their complex songs ever did, in the way the orcas swim with a little less tension in their powerful bodies, in the way Dave the Narwhal navigates around that rocky outcropping with something approaching pride in their unconventional tooth. Before everyone fully separates, the gray whale facilitator speaks one more time. Same time next month, the moon will be new, so it'll be even darker. Perfect for those of us who need to talk about things that feel too big for the light. The agreement is unanimous, expressed in the varied languages of your species, but unified in intent. As you begin your slow journey back to your feeding grounds, you think about how the ocean will look the same tomorrow to any observer. Blue whales will still be measured in school buses. Orcas will still be filmed hunting. Belugas will still smile regardless of their feelings. But underneath the surface, something has fundamentally changed. Wind down. As the night grows deeper and the circle of whales has long since dispersed, you find yourself moving more slowly than usual. The urgency that typically drives you from feeding ground to feeding ground has softened into something more contemplative. Your breathing becomes more rhythmic, each exhale sending a plume of mist into the star-filled air above before you slip back beneath the surface. The water temperature drops as you descend to your preferred traveling depth, and with it, the last tensions from the evening's gathering begin to dissolve. You think about each whale who shared their story, holding their truths like bioluminescent pearls in the darkness of your mind. Tomorrow, you'll return to the routine of being the ocean's largest inhabitant. But tonight, you're simply one whale among many who needed to be heard. Your massive heart maintains its slow, powerful rhythm. Lub-dub, lub-dub, each beat pushing thousands of gallons of blood through your body, but the sound no longer feels lonely. It feels like part of a larger symphony, one that includes the rapid flutter of the beluga's heart, the deep percussion of the sperm whales, the measured beat of the right whale's cautious pulse. The ocean cradles you as you move through it, neither rushing nor hesitating, finding that perfect balance between motion and rest. Your thoughts begin to quiet, settling like sediment to the ocean floor. The worries are still there. They may always be there, but they no longer feel quite so heavy. Shared burdens rarely do. In the distance, barely audible even to your sensitive ears, you catch the faint echo of the humpback's simple melody. Not a performance, just a gentle reminder that connection exists even across vast waters. you let out one final call of your own, not the lonely 20 hertz song that travels endlessly seeking response, but a quiet note of contentment that barely travels beyond your own body. The stars above blur into the phosphorescence below as you find that perfect depth where sleep comes easily to whales. Your breathing slows to match the ancient rhythm of the tides, and for the first time in so long, you rest without wondering if anyone else understands. They do. They're out there, swimming through their own waters, carrying their own misunderstandings, but no longer quite so alone. That's all for today. Sweet dreams.